Hi, everyone. How are y'all doing? Yes. I'm so excited to help steward this conversation with two women who are inspirations of mine. Literally, if you knew me, you know that I'm fangirling right now. This is going to be hopefully a riveting conversation talking about the intersections between climate and gender justice, as well as hopefully leaving you all with some call to actions on how you can get involved in case you're interested in learning more about sustainability and climate solutions. So, to begin the conversation, I'd love for you both, Jackie and Pooja, to introduce yourself, the work that you're in, and how you're arriving to this space.
Thank you. So I actually know both of these lovely ladies from before, and so it's an honor and joy to be on stage with you both. My name is Pooja Tolvawala. My pronouns are she, her, and I was born in India, grew up in the suburbs of Philly. Any Philly people out here? Woo woo! And I started Youth Climate Collaborative in November 2020. We help young people ages 35 and under get involved, stay involved in climate action, and make sure that they have what they need to sustain themselves in the movement. So we focus on climate mental health, equity tech, improving access and inclusion to the space, media training, and a number of other things like international climate policy. But really, our goal is to make sure that the youth have what they need to sustain themselves in the movement and accelerate their solutions. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Yes, and hi, my name is Jackie Patterson. I am with the Chisholm Legacy Project, which we found, also my pronouns are she, her. And the Chisholm Legacy Project we founded in July of 2021 after working with the NAACP's Environmental and Climate Justice Program for 11 years. And so the Chisholm Legacy Project, our tagline is a resource hub for Black frontline climate justice leadership. And we work at the intersection of gender justice, climate justice, and racial justice. And so our work is really, in December, I published this article called How Did You Find Us? And it focused on the communities that are in the furthest reaches, the communities where when our organizers appeared in their areas to see if they'd like to work with the Chisholm Legacy Project, they were so feeling invisibilized and not held by our system that their first statement to us was, how did you find us? And so that's the work that we do, is to be, as Shirley Chisholm said, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring the folding chair. We serve as the folding chair for the most disenfranchised communities. So that's the work that we do in a nutshell. Also, shout out to Insay Witherspoon is in the back with the Children's Environmental Health Network, and those are the kind of groups that we work with there. Thank you.
First, also Philly girl, so go Birds. Just had to say that. Also, Jackie didn't acknowledge that she's a Time Woman of the Year, so like she's. But to really level set, I'd love for us to first break down what are the connections between gender and climate, right? Is climate change specifically singling out women and saying, okay, I'm going to hit you first and worst? How do those dynamics manifest, and why is women-led leadership in the climate movement so integral to creating just solutions?
So, if we're looking at frontline communities hit by climate, what are the roles that women are playing in these communities, right? So if you're going to get water, they're the ones that are walking miles and miles to go get water for their families, bring it back home, and having to go through that heat. They're the ones taking care of the children, raising the children, to know, to have the confidence and the skills to succeed with the tools and resources available to them in the future. And yet they don't have what they need to ensure that their family is safe, protected, that they can actually achieve their own personal goals because they're busy in the day-to-day just making sure that they have, the basic necessities or tools to survive in the climate crisis. But that's looking at more of the frontline communities, right? And then with some of us who do have some more privilege, we still face systemic barriers like gender bias and not getting seats at the table. Like, for example, I think, so a UN report found that only 33% of global climate roles are taken by women, only 33%. Yet we make, over 50% of the population. And so we're not getting our perspectives in the spaces that they need to be, which is a key issue.
Thank you. Yes, and as Pooja said, I would start by modestly stating that if women ruled the world, we wouldn't have a climate crisis in the first place. And so, just to her point, in terms of the bias and the lack of seat at the table, the fact that we are so grossly underrepresented in the decision-making spaces, the fact that money is so grossly overrepresented in the decision-making spaces, and that we are also underrepresented in terms of wealth, globally making 60 cents to the dollar that a gentleman makes. And so that really speaks to why we're here today in terms of talking about a climate crisis in the first place. And so the disproportionate impacts are so many, from the fact that missing and murdered women along the man camps and the pipelines of the oil and gas industry, the violence against women that happens in the context of disaster and in the context of various countries around the world where women aren't able to do some of these tasks like the water and the agricultural tasks that result in violence against women. The violence against women that happen, the violence against women just proliferates at every stage of the climate continuum. And so there are so many ways that we're disproportionately impacted, but also so many ways that we're already leading in terms of climate solutions. And so whether it's the sisters on this stage or folks like Roishetta Ozane, who is out on the front lines of successfully fighting the permit for oil and gas industry in southern Louisiana, folks like Jessica Tovar, who's leading on clean energy with the local Clean Energy Alliance in Los Angeles. I could really name so many more. Folks like Leah Penniman, who's leading on food justice work. Folks who are Monica Patrick, Lewis Patrick, who's with Detroiters for Detroiters. Yeah. Anyway, we the people of Detroit, who's fighting for water justice. Again, I could name woman after woman who has fought and led on the victories and led on the solutions that we need to advance climate justice. And again, if women were in leadership, at not just at the local levels and the state levels, but at the global levels and at the seats of the White House and the other types of national leadership structures and decision-making structures, we would again be in a different place. But as we move towards the decision-making structures that we need to be in, we can start to see the reversing of the tide of climate change.
Can I add something? So, also, I don't remember the exact statistic on this, but when women are trusted with funds, we produce greater results than men. And there's a greater return on investment. And it's a shame that we're forced to operate with such lean budgets. Like, imagine if the budgets were much greater, if we're trusted with much larger sums of money, the impact we could have is significantly greater. And in the VC space, for some reason, women VCs are often perceived as nonprofit, even though we're making great profit in the VC space and having greater returns than men. And this is a cultural shift that's unfortunately taking way too long to change. And I just hope that we see the day where it's more even, if not greater, investments for women and women-led VCs too.
And that's venture capitalism for folks for whom that's not.
And I love that you made that point, because obviously we can spend a lot of time talking about the dynamics that lead, women to experiencing climate change first and worst, but also there's so many opportunities. We know that when women, we haven't yet had the pleasure of having women lead this country, but when women do lead nation states, when they do lead parliaments around the world, they actually are more likely to put forth climate policy that literally leads to less net carbon emissions. We have studies that verify this. We know that when women are in positions of power when it comes to conservation, we have better conservation outcomes. So the data is literally on our side. It's just a matter of, again, a paradigm shift.
examples of that is Wangari Maathai and her work on from Nairobi or Kenya, who and her work on tree planting that has really resulted in so much in terms of carbon absorption, and also the work of Mia Motley of Barbados, who is a leader in terms of the climate initiative, the Bridgetown Initiative. So just illustrative examples of your point.
So, on kind of going on that point, something that I love about this dynamic is that there's this intergenerational perspective that you both are offering. Why is it important for intergenerational collaboration to really be centered in these conversations about uplifting women-led leadership, and what are the benefits for a movement as a whole in uplifting that?
You go first this time.
Right. So I spoke at this event that was for solar installers in Colorado. And after speaking, these two young women, Latina sisters, came up to me and they were both in tears. And they said that they had never heard the work that they do put in this framework of social justice, and they had never heard it coming from another woman of color in terms of even any type of analysis around how the solar industry fits into liberation. And so, and it was this moment that we had together of bonding, where they were inspired and I was inspired by them and their passion, their interest, their leadership. And so there's just so many examples of when there's that kind of cross-generational both inspiration and learning. I often, when I'm engaging with folks who are in leadership, younger folks who are in leadership, I'm often driven to great emotion to see the brilliance, the creativity, the innovation that comes from their leadership. And so to be able to talk about the traditions, to talk about the history, because as they say, if you don't know your past, then you're not going to be able to move forward. And so that's one thing that older folks might bring, and then younger folks will bring, again, a vision of what can be. When we talk about Black futurism, that kind of thrust of as I think even the speaker before was talking about, often the vision is limited by what's before us in terms of thinking of what just what's plausible, and the plausibility can be really limited in terms of one's vision if one is only kind of used to what one can get. But to be able to think about what could be, what should be in a more visionary, audacious way, that's something that I find that youth are able to do uniquely. And so that combination of knowing what's in the past and knowing what can be and what should be in the future has been valuable, and example after example after example. So.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. So at our organization, we're actually doing research on intergenerational collaboration models, trying to summarize models of advisory boards, board of directors, 50 to 100 case studies. Hopefully we'll launch it next year. But basically, we found that there is a rise, thankfully, of intergenerational decision-making structures in organizations, and we've been seeing that from corporations, from government, from nonprofits. Like, for example, for the huge UN climate conference, COP, there's several youth negotiator programs where youth are paired with more experienced, seasoned negotiators and trained on negotiating. And then who here owned a BlackBerry before when it came out? Yeah, what happened to BlackBerry, right? So one of the problems, when the downfall was assessed, they really thought about, we didn't put youth on our boards in our decision making. We didn't cater to the rising market, and that's largely why they fell. And so in order to have successful initiatives, in order to envision the future we want and get there together, we need to have all generations at the table. And, another example, in the US, there are 7 states where if you're under 18, you can't be a voting board member. And so we're trying to change this law in those 7 states. And, that law shouldn't be the case, right? So those are just some few things I want to mention.
Yeah, so time is running away from us. So I'm going to
Yeah.
ask one final question. It's kind of a big question. So, is the world ending? So that's a big question everyone's asking, right? It's kind of scary. It's almost like you go on social media, you see a report. This is a real report, right? WWF released a report at the end of last year, which unfortunately didn't get enough attention, which saw that we've seen a 73% decline in wildlife populations in the past 50 years. Whoa, hold up. Also, obviously, frequency and abundance of natural disasters just seems to be increasing. So what would you say to someone like myself who's experiencing climate anxiety, grief, and what's the case for joy in this circumstance? Is being joyful reductive, or is it something that we should lean into enthusiastically?
Go first. Okay. So, where was I going to start with this? So there was a study, a 2021 Lancet study. They surveyed 10,000 youth from 10 different countries around the world. And what they found in that, 75% of the youth think the future is frightening. 83% think people have failed to take care of the planet. And 45% stated that these emotions negatively affected their daily life and functioning. That's crazy. 45% of youth, right? And yet, I think we are, giving each other hope. I get hope from my peers by seeing the solutions, by going like heads down and focusing on the work. There's this great book by Dr. Anna Elizabeth Johnson called "What If We Get It Right?" So I always find myself when I'm in the doom scroll mode, asking myself, what if we got it right? Instead of this, what does the flip look like? And we have to remind ourselves to think of the paradigm shift, to look at the problem and try to find the solution in it, even if, odds are against us. So I think that the world is not ending. For humans, it might be ending, if we don't proceed with the urgency and attention that these problems require, truthfully. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think even to this point around intergenerational and this point around joy, I think about when a number of talks that I've given recently, I started with Say Drake, and people immediately feel that kind of boost of joy, but it also says something about who can command the narrative and who, and even though like that 13-minute halftime show had a lot going on, like it also had a lot of really instructive things that are about kind of really the challenges of society today. And so when we think about the joy that we get from pop culture, the joy that we get from humor, then it's important to be able to both convey meaning and to be able to give us like a bit of an infusion of the spirit that we need to carry on. And so to the question, I think even now, as we are in this kind of deconstruction phase, this has been what we've been clamoring for in terms of systems change. Like the carnage with the way that it's being done now is certainly something to navigate, but it also says that now it's our time to think audaciously about what can be. Mm-hmm. As we kind of rise as a phoenix from the ashes, we can think about like a world that actually centers liberty and justice for all and the tenets of our Constitution, as opposed to power and money for just a finite few. And as women in particular, as you were saying too, in terms of how women handle resources, we can think about a way that we build a regenerative economy that allows for everyone. And we know that's possible. There's abundance in what's available to us. The earth and its regenerative design can provide for everyone. And we can think about a way to rebuild our world and rebuild our economy in a way that centers that.
That's great.
Well, thank you both. Thank you all. And climate justice is possible.